There I was sitting in my car outside our family's favorite Italian restaurant, staring through the window at my siblings already gathered around the table. My heart was pounding, palms sweating as I gripped my car keys. The question that kept running through my mind was simple yet devastating. Why was I even here? This story is about the last time I decided to say no to my family, and trust me, it changed everything. You see, I had become something I never wanted to be in my family's eyes. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and please hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt like the family ATM. Trust me, you are going to want to hear how this story ends, because what happened that night will probably surprise you. My name is Amber, and at 28 years old, I thought I had my life figured out. I was working as an accountant in Denver, Colorado, making about $75,000 a year. Sure, it was not a fortune, but it was steady, reliable income that allowed me to live comfortably in my little studio apartment downtown. I had always been the responsible one in my family, the one who saved money, planned ahead, and somehow always seemed to have things together. My family was pretty typical, I thought. There was my dad, Mark, 58, a retired mechanic who had worked his whole life fixing cars and trucks. My mom, Linda, was 55 and worked part-time as a nurse at the local clinic. Then there were my siblings. My older brother, Jake, was 32, married to Sarah, and they had the most adorable 5-year-old daughter named Lily. Jake did freelance construction work, which meant his income was pretty unpredictable. My sister Madison was 30, single, and worked as a makeup artist when she could find gigs. And my youngest brother Ryan was 25 in his final year of law school. I loved my family deeply. We had always been close, the kind of family that got together for Sunday dinners and never missed each other's birthdays. Growing up, my parents had instilled in me the belief that family comes first, that blood is thicker than water, and that when family needs help, you help without question. I had taken these lessons to heart, maybe more than I should have. The first time someone in my family asked me for money, it felt natural, even good. Jake and Sarah needed $3,000 for a security deposit on a new apartment when Lily was just 6 months old. They were living in this tiny one-bedroom place that was not suitable for a baby, and they had found a perfect 2-bedroom apartment, but needed to move fast. Jake promised he would pay me back within 6 months. I did not hesitate. I transferred the money that same day, happy that I could help my brother provide a better home for his daughter. A few months later, Madison called me in tears. She had been offered a position at an upscale salon, but she needed professional-grade makeup equipment that cost $1,500. This was her big break. She said, her chance to finally establish herself as a serious makeup artist. She promised this investment would pay for itself within a month once she started earning better money. Again, I said yes without hesitation. Then Ryan needed help with his final semester tuition, $4,000. His student loans had fallen through and he was so close to graduating. If he could not pay, he would have to drop out and lose everything he had worked for. How could I say no to my baby brother's education? Even my parents needed help. Their air conditioning unit broke during a brutal Colorado summer, and the repair bill was $800. They were on a fixed income, and Dad's pension did not leave much room for unexpected expenses. Then there was the roof leak after a severe storm that cost $1,200 to fix. Each time I felt proud that I could help. Each time I was told it was temporary, that I would be paid back soon. Each time I believed them, because they were my family, and family does not lie to each other about money, right? But as months passed, something started to change. The conversations about paying me back became less frequent, then stopped altogether. When I gently brought up the money Jake owed me 8 months later, he would change the subject or say something like, "You know, I am good for it," without ever mentioning when. Madison seemed to have forgotten entirely about the makeup equipment loan, even going so far as to quietly block me on Venmo after I sent a gentle reminder. Ryan would just say, "I know I will handle it," but never brought it up again. My parents would change the subject whenever I asked about the air conditioning or roof money, acting as if those conversations had never happened. What really started to bother me was how our family dinners began to change. It started innocently enough. We would all meet at a restaurant to celebrate someone's birthday or achievement, and when the bill came, there would be this awkward moment. Jake would pat his pockets and mention being a little tight that month. Madison would check her purse and realize she had forgotten to bring enough cash. Ryan was always on a student budget. My parents, well, they were on a fixed income. The first time this happened at Olive Garden for my mother's birthday, I watched as the $180 bill sat on the table while everyone suddenly became very interested in their phones. Jake looked at me with those puppy dog eyes and said, "You know how it is with the baby expenses?" Madison chimed in with, "I just lost my job last week." Ryan added his standard, "You know I am broke as a student." My parents sat there looking uncomfortable and embarrassed, but also expectant. And somehow, every single time, all eyes would turn to me. I felt the pressure, the unspoken expectation, and I pulled out my credit card and paid for everyone. At first it felt good. I was helping my family celebrate. I was the successful one who could afford to treat everyone. But gradually it became assumed rather than appreciated. I started keeping track not because I wanted to be petty, but because I was starting to worry about my own finances. In 10 months, I had loaned out $12,000 to various family members and had not seen a single penny returned. On top of that, I was spending between $150 and $250 every month on family dinners that I somehow always ended up paying for completely. The monthly family dinners evolved from casual get-togethers to elaborate affairs. January brought us to a steakhouse for my parents' anniversary, where I paid $220. February was a Mexican restaurant after Madison supposedly got a new job, and I covered $156. March meant an Italian place to celebrate Ryan passing a major exam, another $189 from my account. April was a seafood buffet, just because we missed each other. That cost me $267. But the requests did not stop at dinners. Jake needed $500 when Sarah got sick, and they did not have insurance coverage. Madison required $300 to fix her car before an important job interview. Ryan needed $400 for new textbooks. My parents asked for $1,200 to repair roof damage after a storm. Christmas shopping became my responsibility when I somehow volunteered to buy $800 worth of presents for all the nieces and nephews. My best friend Jenna started to notice that I was declining invitations to go out. When she asked why I found myself making excuses about saving money, but the truth was more complicated. I was saving money, but not for myself. I was constantly worried that someone in my family would need money, and I needed to make sure I had it available. The behavior pattern from my family became predictable and manipulative. Jake would always use the tone, "You know you have money," while crafting sob stories about the difficulties of raising a child. Madison perfected emotional manipulation with phrases like, "Do you not love me anymore?" whenever I showed any hesitation. Ryan would pile on academic pressure with, "If I do not pass this, I will have to drop out." My parents employed classic guilt trips with, "We are family, and your success is because of what we taught you." I tried to set boundaries several times, but each attempt was met with resistance and accusation. When I suggested Jake create a payment plan, he accused me of trying to control him. When I recommended Madison apply for financial aid programs, she called me pretentious. When I mentioned student loans to Ryan, he said I was not being supportive of family. When I suggested my parents file an insurance claim for the roof, they guilt-tripped me about not trusting them. The wake-up call came when my own car broke down. The transmission needed to be replaced, and the bill was $1,400. For the first time in months, I was the one who needed help. I called Jake first, figuring he could at least return some of the $3,000 I had loaned him. His response was immediate and crushing. "I am really tight right now, but you have a good job, you can handle it." I called Madison next. Surely she could help with a few $100, considering the $1,500 I had given her for her makeup career. "I just paid rent and I am completely broke," she said. "But you always figure these things out." Ryan's response was similar. "You know how student finances are. I am sure you will manage." Even my parents, when I called them, seemed surprised that I was asking for help. "We are actually worried about your grandmother's medical bills right now," my mom said. "But you are smart with money, you will work something out." I ended up having to borrow money from my company's emergency fund to fix my car. As I sat in the dealership waiting area, signing paperwork for a loan from my employer, something clicked into place. I had given my family over $18,000 in the past year and a half, but when I needed $1,400, not one of them could help me, not even a little bit. That conversation with Jenna finally opened my eyes. "Amber, this is not normal," she said bluntly. "My family would never expect one person to fund everyone else's life." When I tried to defend them by saying they were going through tough times, she asked the question that changed everything. "For 18 months, and nobody has paid you back anything." I realized with horror that she was right. Not one single dollar had been returned to me. The pattern became impossible to ignore once I started paying attention. Every single month brought at least 1 or 2 requests for money from someone in my family. The reasons were always different, and always urgent car repairs for Madison medical bills, for Jake and Sarah, job interview clothes, textbooks for Ryan, utility bills for my parents, birthday presents for other family members. The amounts ranged from $200 to $1,000 each time, and the promises to pay me back had evolved from specific dates to vague assurances to complete silence. What made everything worse was watching how our monthly family dinners had transformed into expensive productions. We went from meeting at casual chain restaurants to upscale establishments where the average meal cost $50 per person. When we celebrated anything, somehow the venue kept getting more elaborate and expensive. My mother's birthday took us to Morton's Steakhouse. Jake's work achievement meant dinner at a fancy seafood place. Madison's new job called for celebration at an Italian restaurant where pasta dishes started at $35. The most painful part was observing how my family behaved during these dinners. They would spend 20 minutes studying the menu, discussing which appetizers looked good, debating between the lobster and the ribeye steak, ordering multiple cocktails and bottles of wine. They acted like people who had unlimited budgets, people who never had to worry about money. And why would they worry? They had me. I started calculating bills in my head from the moment we sat down. Appetizers for the table, $24. 7 entrees averaging $50 each, that is $350. Drinks and wine, another $150. Dessert tax tip. Every family celebration was costing me between $500 and $700, and that was on top of the individual loans that kept coming my way. The first time I suggested we split the bill evenly, you would have thought I had suggested we commit a crime together. Jake looked genuinely shocked. "Come on, you know I am having a tough month," he said, as if his financial situation was my responsibility to manage. Madison seemed personally hurt. "I thought we were family," she said. "Since when do we split checks like we are strangers meeting for business?" But the comment that really got to me came from Ryan. "You just got a bonus at work, right? You do not mind covering this, do you?" It was not phrased as a question. It was stated as a fact, an assumption about my willingness to pay based on my supposed wealth. I minded desperately. But in that moment, with everyone looking at me, with my parents appearing embarrassed by the whole conversation about money, I pulled out my credit card once again and paid the entire bill. The pattern was set and everyone knew it. The breaking point setup began during Christmas shopping season. Madison called me sobbing because she did not have money to buy presents for all the children in the family. Jake mentioned casually that Lily really wanted this $300 dollhouse. But times were tight with the new baby coming. Ryan needed money for a professional suit for law school interviews, something that would cost at least $400. Even my parents hinted that they were worried about having enough money to make Christmas special for everyone. Without really planning to, I found myself spending $800 on Christmas presents for my nieces and nephews, plus another $300 hosting and paying for a family Christmas dinner. When Christmas morning arrived and everyone was opening presents, I realized something that made me physically sick. I had spent over $1,000 making Christmas happen for my family, but the only present under the tree with my name on it was a $20 candle from my mom. The financial impact on my life was becoming severe. My savings account had dropped from $25,000 to just $6,500. I was living paycheck to paycheck, not because I did not make decent money, but because I was supporting 4 other adults and their various expenses and lifestyle choices. I had stopped going out with friends, stopped dating, stopped doing any activities that cost money because I needed to keep funds available for the next family emergency. My mental health was deteriorating rapidly. I was having anxiety attacks before family events, losing sleep, worrying about money, and developing a constant knot in my stomach whenever my phone rang. I was 28 years old, making decent money and living like a broke college student because I was funding everyone else's lifestyle choices. The guilt trips became more sophisticated and cruel over time. When I showed any hesitation about paying for something, my mother would say, "We raised you to be generous with family." My father would add, "Family helps family, that is how we have always been." Jake would remind me that I did not have children to support as if that meant my financial goals and security did not matter at all. Ryan would talk about how stressed he was about school and how family support was the only thing keeping him going emotionally. I tried setting boundaries multiple times, but each attempt was met with increasing hostility. When I suggested that Jake should create a payment plan for the $3,000 he owed me, he accused me of being controlling and treating him like a business partner instead of a brother. When I recommended that Madison look into financial assistance programs for freelance artists, she told me I was being pretentious and acting like I was better than everyone else. The most damaging responses came when I tried to suggest less expensive alternatives for our family gatherings. When I proposed we meet at someone's house instead of restaurants, I was told that restaurants were more convenient for everyone. When I suggested chain restaurants instead of upscale places, I was accused of being cheap and not wanting to properly celebrate family milestones. My attempts to get repaid were met with creative deflection tactics. Jake would say, "We are family, we do not keep score like business partners." Madison would respond with, "I cannot believe you're keeping track of every penny like an accountant." Ryan would say, "Nobody forced you to help us." My parents would simply change the subject, or act hurt that I had brought up money at all. The final setup began when my mother called to invite me to yet another family dinner. "Jake has wonderful news to share," she said with obvious excitement. "We are all meeting at Morton's on Saturday night. Morton's Steakhouse, the most expensive restaurant in downtown Denver, where entrees started at $50 and a bottle of wine could cost more than my monthly grocery budget." I hung up the phone and sat in my apartment, looking around at my sparse furniture and bare walls. I had not been able to afford to decorate or buy anything nice for myself in over a year because every spare dollar went to my family. I was 28 years old, making $75,000 a year, and living in a barely furnished studio apartment because I was financing the lifestyles of 4 other adults who seemed to think my money was their money. As I sat in my car outside Morton's that Saturday night, watching my family through the window as they laughed and talked, already drinking expensive wine, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to walk in there and tell them that I could not and would not pay for dinner. I was going to tell them exactly how much money they owed me. I was going to tell them how their constant financial demands had destroyed my own financial security and mental health. I just had no idea how much uglier it was going to get before it got better. Walking into Morton's that night felt like walking into a carefully set trap. The restaurant screamed expensive luxury dark mahogany walls, leather banquettes, crystal chandeliers, and soft jazz music that could not quite mask the sound of my heart pounding. My family was already seated at a large round table near the window, and as I approached I could see they had already ordered drinks and appetizers. "Amber." Madison jumped up to hug me, her face flushed with excitement. "We already ordered a bottle of the Cabernet and some shrimp cocktail. I hope that is okay." I glanced at the wine bottle on the table and knew, without looking at the menu, that it probably cost at least $80. We had not even ordered entrees yet, and the bill was already climbing toward triple digits. Jake stood up with the biggest grin I had ever seen on his face. "Get ready for some incredible news," he said, practically bouncing with excitement. Sarah was sitting beside him, her hand resting protectively on her stomach, in a gesture that immediately told me what at least part of the announcement was going to be. My parents looked proud and happy, already reaching for their second glass of the expensive wine I would presumably be paying for. "So," Jake said once I had sat down and the server had poured me a glass of wine I had not asked for, "Sarah and I have some life-changing news to share with everyone." He paused dramatically, clearly savoring the moment. "First, I got the promotion to supervisor at the construction company. 20% raise full benefits package company, truck the whole deal." Everyone around the table erupted in cheers and started clinking wine glasses together. I forced what I hoped looked like a genuine smile and tried to feel happy for my brother, but all I could think about was the $3,000 he still owed me and had never once mentioned paying back, even though he was about to start making significantly more money. "And," Sarah said, her eyes absolutely sparkling with joy, "we are having another baby. I am 12 weeks along. Lily is going to be a big sister, more cheering, more clinking of glasses, more expensive wine being poured." The excitement was genuinely infectious, and for a brief moment I forgot about my growing financial anxiety and felt authentically happy for them. A new baby was wonderful news, and Jake's promotion was long overdue recognition for his hard work. But then I made the mistake of looking at the menu. Appetizers ranged from $16 to $24 each. Entrees were priced between $35 and $65. The wine list featured bottles that cost more than my monthly car payment. As I watched my family browsing the menu and discussing what looked delicious, I realized with growing horror that they were all planning to order as if money was absolutely no object. Because in their minds, it was not their money. They had me. "The lobster tail looks amazing," Madison said, pointing to the $62 entree with genuine enthusiasm. "I am definitely thinking about the dry-aged ribeye," Ryan added, examining the $58 steak option. My parents were having an animated discussion about whether to order the lamb or the salmon, both priced over $50 each. Jake was already signaling the server to bring us the $24 shrimp cocktail appetizer for the table to add to the one they had already ordered. I was frantically calculating numbers in my head while trying to look like I was paying attention to the celebratory conversation. 7 adults plus 1 child. Multiple appetizers, expensive entrees, premium wine, probably dessert, tax and tip. We were looking at a bill somewhere between $500 and $700, which represented nearly my entire monthly discretionary income after rent and basic living expenses. "Amber, what are you thinking about ordering?" the server asked, and I suddenly realized that everyone at the table was looking at me expectantly, waiting for my decision. "I am still looking over the options," I said, though honestly I was scanning for the cheapest items on the menu and wondering how I was going to afford this without completely draining my checking account. As the dinner progressed, the conversation flowed happily around me while I sat there feeling increasingly disconnected from the celebration. Jake was talking enthusiastically about his promotion and how this was just the beginning of even bigger opportunities. Sarah was glowing and discussing potential baby names and nursery themes with my mother. Madison was excitedly telling everyone about a potential job opportunity at a high-end makeup counter. Ryan was talking about graduating from law school in just a few months and his plans for taking the bar exam. Everyone seemed so happy, so carefree, so completely unaware that I was sitting there having what felt like a full-blown panic attack about money. Again. "You know," Jake said, raising his wine glass in a toast, "this promotion would not have happened without incredible family support. When Sarah was on bed rest during her pregnancy with Lily, when I had to take time off work to care for them, having family who believed in me and supported me made all the difference in the world." As he spoke those words, I thought about the $3,000 I had given him during that exact time period. Money that had apparently been considered family support rather than a loan, though I distinctly remembered him promising to pay it back within 6 months. Money that had never been mentioned again after the initial transaction. "We should definitely do this more often," Madison added enthusiastically. "I feel like we do not celebrate each other enough as a family. Family really is everything." The irony was absolutely crushing. Here they were talking about family support and celebrating each other at an outrageously expensive restaurant they fully expected me to pay for, while owing me money they had no intention of ever returning. When the bill finally arrived, the total was $547.83. With a proper tip, we were looking at close to $700 total. The server placed the black leather folder in the center of the table, and there was a long moment of complete silence, as everyone suddenly became very interested in their phones, their drinks, the artwork on the walls, anywhere but the bill sitting right in front of us. The server stood nearby with that patient but expectant expression that waitstaff everywhere, perfect, clearly waiting for someone to take charge of the payment situation. "Wow," Jake said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "I guess this place ended up being pricier than I thought it would be. I literally have $20 in my checking account right now," Madison announced, making an elaborate show of checking her mobile banking app on her phone. "Student budget, you know how it is," Ryan said, automatically falling back on his standard excuse for absolutely everything financial. My parents sat there looking embarrassed but hopeful, wearing the same expression I had seen dozens of times before during these exact scenarios. Sarah was gently bouncing Lily on her lap, trying to keep her quiet, and clearly hoping someone else would handle all the financial details so she could focus on managing the 5-year-old. And then, just like always, everyone at the table turned to look directly at me with those expectant faces. But this time, something inside me finally snapped completely. "You know what?" I said, my voice louder and shakier than I had intended. I absolutely cannot do this anymore. The entire table went dead silent. Even Lily stopped fussing and looked at me with wide, surprised eyes. For the past 18 months, I continued, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my voice growing stronger and clearer. I have paid for every single family dinner we have had. I have loaned money that never ever gets paid back. Jake, you still owe me $3,000 from when Lily was a baby. Madison, you owe me $1,500 for your professional makeup kit. Ryan, you owe me $4,000 for your tuition. Mum and Dad, you owe me $800 for the air conditioning repair and $1,200 for the roof. My family was staring at me as if I had suddenly started speaking in a completely foreign language they had never heard before. I have given this family over $18,000 in the past year and a half. I said, my voice getting stronger with each word, and not one single penny has ever been paid back to me. Not one. Amber, Jake said very carefully, like he was talking to someone who might be dangerous. We are family here. We do not keep score like that with each other. Keep score. I almost started laughing, but it came out more like a sob. Jake, when my car broke down last month and I needed $1,400 to fix it, where exactly was this family that does not keep score? You told me you were tight on money. Madison, you said you had no extra funds. Ryan, you were on a student budget. Mom and Dad, you had grandmother's medical bills to worry about. That is completely different, Madison said quickly, her voice defensive. You have a stable job and steady income. We are all struggling financially right now. Struggling? I looked around the table in disbelief. You are all struggling financially, but you chose to come to Morton Steakhouse tonight. You are struggling, but you ordered $60 entrees and $80 bottles of wine. I could see that our conversation was beginning to attract attention from other tables around us. People were turning to look at our table, but I was far beyond caring about making a scene. This is really uncomfortable for everyone, Sarah said quietly, bouncing Lily more vigorously. You want to know what is uncomfortable? I said, my voice rising again. Being 28 years old and having almost no savings left because I have been financing everyone else's lifestyle choices. Being unable to go out with my friends or date anyone because I need to keep money available for the next family emergency. Being treated like a walking ATM machine instead of like a daughter and sister. Nobody ever forced you to help any of us. Ryan said, his tone becoming defensive and almost angry. You are absolutely right, I said, pushing back my chair and standing up. Nobody forced me to help. I helped because I thought that is what family members do for each other. I thought when you said loan, you actually meant loan. I thought when I helped you during emergencies, you would help me during mine. I thought wrong about all of it. I pulled $75 out of my wallet and placed it deliberately on the table in front of my place setting. That covers my meal and tip, I said clearly. The rest of you can figure out how to handle the remaining $470 yourselves. As I walked toward the restaurant exit, I could hear my mother calling my name, but I did not turn around or slow down. I sat in my car in the parking lot for exactly 5 minutes, hands shaking uncontrollably, heart racing, giving them one last chance to come outside and apologize or try to make things right. Nobody came. Through the restaurant window, I could see them having what looked like a heated argument, gesturing toward the bill, looking frustrated and angry with each other. Eventually, I watched Jake reluctantly pull out his credit card, with obvious resentment written all over his face. And for the first time in 18 months, I drove home without paying for my family's dinner. The 3 days of complete silence that followed were some of the most emotionally difficult days of my entire life. I kept checking my phone, obsessively expecting angry text messages or guilt-inducing phone calls, but there was absolutely nothing. It was as if I had simply vanished from my family's world entirely. On the 4th day, my mom finally called. "We need to talk," she said, her voice carefully controlled and colder than I had ever heard it. "Can you meet me for coffee this afternoon?" I agreed to meet her at the Starbucks near my apartment, choosing neutral territory where she could not corner me in my own space or create a scene in public. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a small table in the corner, looking tired and older than I remembered her looking before. "Honey," she began the moment I sat down across from her, "we are all very worried about you. This kind of behavior is not like you at all." I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "Mom, what exactly about my behavior is not like me? Standing up for myself, refusing to be financially taken advantage of by my own family. "Money has really changed you," she said, sadly shaking her head with disappointment. "You used to be so generous and loving toward your family. Now everything seems to be about dollars and cents with you." The accusation stung deeply, but I forced myself to remain composed. "Mom, I want to have a good relationship with my family, but it cannot continue to be based on me financing everyone else's lifestyle choices. If we are going to move forward together, we need to establish some clear ground rules about money." "Ground rules?" She looked genuinely offended by the suggestion. "We are not strangers doing business together, Amber. We are family. Real family members respect each other," I said firmly. "Real family members keep their promises to each other. Real family members help each other mutually, instead of just taking from whoever is willing and able to give." "You are being completely unreasonable about this," she said, her voice getting sharper. "This attitude of yours is going to tear our entire family apart." "Mom, the family was already torn apart," I replied, the moment I became the only person responsible for solving everyone else's financial problems. 2 days later, Jake showed up at my apartment door unannounced. I could hear him knocking loudly and decided I might as well face this confrontation directly rather than avoid it. "You completely embarrassed my pregnant wife and my 5-year-old daughter," he said angrily the moment I opened the door. "Sarah has been stressed and crying because of what you did. You ruined what should have been the happiest day of my life." "Jake," I said, stepping aside to let him into my apartment, "I am genuinely happy about your promotion and about the new baby, but I am not responsible for managing your financial situation or paying for your celebrations. You make significantly more money than the rest of us combined," he said, his voice getting louder and more accusatory. "I make $75,000 a year," I said calmly. "After taxes, that comes to about $55,000 in actual take-home pay. After rent, car payment, insurance, groceries, and basic living expenses, I have maybe $800 a month available for savings and discretionary spending. In 18 months, I gave this family the equivalent of 23 months of my discretionary income." Jake stared at me blankly. I realized that he had probably never thought about my actual finances in concrete, realistic terms. "You chose to help us," he said, finally falling back on the same defensive argument. "You are right, I did choose to help," I agreed. "But I chose to help based on lies and false promises. When you said you would pay me back in 6 months, I believed you. When Madison called it a loan, I believed her. When Ryan promised to repay me after graduation, I believed him." A week later, Madison showed up at my door with tears streaming down her face and childhood memories ready to deploy as weapons. "I miss my sister," she said dramatically. "Remember when we were kids and we used to share everything with each other?" "Sharing means both people give and take," I replied steadily. "I have been giving consistently for 18 months. When exactly do I get to receive anything back?" Ryan tried a completely different approach during his finals week, calling me about a textbook he claimed he could not afford to buy. The old version of me would have immediately sent money without question. The new version of me gave him the phone numbers for Student Financial Aid, the campus used bookstore, and the library reserve desk. "You have really changed," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I have really learned," I replied. The real test of whether anything had actually changed came 3 weeks after the Morton's incident, when my dad called and asked if we could meet for coffee. His voice sounded different somehow, quieter and more thoughtful than I was used to hearing from him. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Just you and me, nobody else involved." When we met at a diner near his house, I could see genuine remorse in his expression for the first time since this whole situation had started. "Your mother and I have been talking a lot about everything," he said slowly. "I think we really took advantage of your generosity, and that was not right." Then he did something that completely shocked me. He pulled out a check for $500 and placed it on the table between us. "We borrowed $2,000 from you for the air conditioning repair and the roof work," he said. "This is what we can manage to pay you right now, but we are going to give you $50 every month until the full amount is paid off." I started crying right there in the diner, not because of the money itself, but because it was the first real acknowledgement I had received from anyone in my family that they actually owed me anything at all. "Thank you, Dad," I managed to say through my tears. "This really is not about the money anymore. It is about respect and honesty." "I know," he said quietly. And no more automatically expecting you to pay for family dinners. We are all adults here. We should start acting like it. The changes in my family dynamics came slowly but steadily over the following months. Jake and Sarah actually calculated and paid their fair portion at the next family gathering we attended together. Madison finally got a steady job at a department store makeup counter instead of constantly asking me for financial help. Ryan applied for proper student loans like every other law student in America, instead of expecting family members to fund his education. 6 months after the Morton's confrontation, my savings account was back up to $12,000. My relationship with my family was different now, sometimes more strained, but definitely more honest. Some relationships had actually improved through the process. Others might never be quite the same as they were before. But the most important relationship that had been repaired was the one I had with myself. I learned that saying no to people you love does not mean you love them any less than before. It means you love yourself enough to not completely disappear in service of other people. Real family members support each other mutually. They do not just take constantly from whoever happens to be willing to give. The most expensive lesson I ever paid for in my entire life was learning that generosity without boundaries is not actually generosity at all. It is just enabling other people's dysfunction while damaging your own well-being. Some people ask me if I regret standing up to my family that night at Morton's Steakhouse. The truth is, I regret waiting so long to do it. I regret all the opportunities I missed, all the stress I carried unnecessarily, and all the resentment I allowed to build up inside me. But I do not regret choosing to value myself, because at the end of the day, if you do not value yourself enough to set boundaries, you cannot teach other people how to value you either. If this story sounds familiar to your own life, if you are the family ATM in your circle, remember this important truth: helping people who will not help themselves is not actually helping at all. It is just postponing their personal growth while preventing your own. Have you ever been in a situation where family members or friends expected you to always be the one paying for everything? How did you handle setting financial boundaries with people you care about? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with your own life, please give this video a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family drama and finding your voice in difficult relationships. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it is perfectly okay to set healthy boundaries with the people you love. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story, and remember that your worth as a person is never measured by how much money you give to others, but by how much you respect yourself and your own needs. Take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you in the next video.